When you're going through the lively streets of New Orleans, one building stands out: the LaLaurie Mansion. It's not just because of its impressive architecture, but also because of the haunting stories that surround it. People flock here not just for the history, but for a taste of the paranormal. The mansion is famously known as the LaLaurie Mansion, named after a family whose name became synonymous with horror in the 1830s after a devastating fire engulfed their home. Over the years, it has gained a reputation as one of the most haunted houses in New Orleans. Tour guides share tales of strange happenings, such as bags mysteriously moving and streetlights going out unexpectedly. But who could be haunting this place? The LaLauries escaped, so what dark entities are within its walls? To uncover the truth, let's step back in time and meet the key players of this story. In March 1787, Delphine McCarty came into the world in New Orleans, which was then part of the Spanish territory. The McCarty family, of European Creole descent, held significant status, with Delphine growing up in luxury and prominence. Her uncle even held the prestigious position of governor over 2 Spanish-American provinces. At just 13 years old, in the early 1800s, Delphine got married to a high-ranking officer in Spain's Royal Army. Like many of their social standing, they traveled often to Spain and other Spanish territories, but things took a dark turn when Delphine's husband fell seriously ill and died during a stopover in Havana, Cuba, leaving 17-year-old Delphine with a newborn baby. In 1808, Delphine entered her second marriage with a prominent Frenchman named Jean Blanc, who was a banker, lawyer, and legislator. With Jean, Delphine had 4 children. Sadly, Jean passed away in 1816, leaving Delphine widowed once more, this time with 5 children to care for. She remained a widow until 1825. Like many wealthy women of her time, Delphine owned slaves. In 1825, Delphine, then in her middle years, met a Frenchman named Dr. Leonard Louis Nicolas LaLaurie. Dr. LaLaurie arrived in New Orleans claiming expertise in a new French treatment for hunchbacks, though he lacked a distinguished family background. Delphine's daughter Pauline reportedly had a spinal disorder, possibly leading to their introduction. They tied the knot later that year. Despite Dr. LaLaurie being younger and less wealthy than Delphine, they had a child together. Their relationship faced challenges, notably due to Dr. LaLaurie's modest financial contribution to the marriage, causing significant tension between him and Delphine. Dr. LaLaurie was reputedly harsh and abusive towards Delphine, often absent due to long work hours, leaving her to manage alone. Rumors swirled about his possible affair with a much younger woman, perhaps even one of their female slaves. In 1831, Edward Dufossat sold his unfinished home at 1140 Royal Street to the LaLauries. But rumors had already begun to circulate about the LaLauries, and Delphine in particular. There were records showing that Delphine treated her slaves decently in front of others, and she even freed 2 of them. But despite this, rumors about her and the LaLaurie Mansion continued to swirl, contributing to the mystery surrounding the house. Despite some accounts of her kindness, other rumors depicted Delphine as a cruel and violent mistress. It was whispered that she shackled her 7-year-old cook to the stove, leaving the child to starve. There were also dark tales of secret slaves kept for her husband's use in practicing his Haitian voodoo rituals. Additionally, she was said to have punished her daughters harshly for showing any compassion towards the slaves. Delphine's children later talked about how scared they were of her anger. In 1832, she tried to separate from Dr. LaLaurie because she felt deeply hurt by him in public. According to Louisiana and New Orleans laws, slaves were supposed to be treated well, but the living conditions at the LaLaurie Mansion weren't up to par. Court representatives visited the LaLaurie residence at least twice in response to rumors of mistreatment. When questioned about Delphine's alleged abuse of her slaves, Dr. LaLaurie instructed them to mind their own business. However, even as the LaLauries were under scrutiny for these allegations, 2 incidents of abuse were eventually confirmed, further fueling the already existing rumors surrounding the mansion's dark history. One incident confirmed the tragic death of a young male slave who leaped from a 3rd-story window to escape punishment by Delphine. In response, the window was cemented shut and remains sealed to this day. Another tragic incident involved a 12-year-old slave girl named Leah. One day while combing Delphine's hair, Leah accidentally pulled too hard, sending Delphine into a furious rage. Instead of escaping, Leah fled to the roof, pursued by Delphine armed with a whipping strap. In a desperate attempt to escape punishment, Leah tragically jumped to her death. Delphine later buried the child in the yard, adding to the mansion's already dark and haunting history. In 1834, the LaLaurie Mansion was deliberately set ablaze by the cook, who chose suicide and fire as a means to escape Delphine's brutal abuse. When bystanders and responders arrived at the burning house, many found it odd that there were no enslaved people around. As the responders arrived, the LaLauries had already fled, leaving behind a horrific scene. Their search for survivors revealed the horrifying reality hidden within the mansion's walls. The cook, an elderly enslaved woman, was indeed chained to the stove but miraculously survived the fire. As responders broke down doors, the full extent of the horror was seen. In the attic, they found 7 enslaved people chained to the walls. The enslaved people had been horrifically tortured, some with unverified reports of eyes cut out, skin stripped open, and mouths filled with tar. Limbs were stretched and torn from one extremity to the other, with some barely recognizable due to the extent of their suffering. Some had extra limbs attached, while others had their mouths shut or filled with tar. The extent of their suffering was unimaginable, with investigators reeling from the brutality they encountered. It was a scene of unspeakable horror, one that would forever stain the legacy of the LaLaurie Mansion. The horrors of the LaLaurie Mansion didn't end there. Reports indicated that a slave woman had many of her bones deliberately broken and reset in a twisted manner to make her resemble a crab. Other enslaved people were found with holes drilled into their skulls, with spoons nearby, presumably used to stir their brains. In one particular discovery, a woman was found wrapped in human intestines. Additionally, there were dead bodies scattered around. The corpses were disfigured, with organs either hanging out of their bodies or missing altogether. As for numbers, some say there were only a few maimed corpses found, while others claim there were over 100. When all this gruesome information reached the bystanders outside, over 4,000 angry townsfolk ransacked the mansion, breaking windows, knocking down doors, and causing chaos. The house was left in a state of ruin. But what happened to the LaLauries? Document trails say that Delphine and Dr. LaLaurie reunited with their unmarried children at Delphine's niece's house. While there, the LaLauries signed over power of attorney, allowing 2 relatives to manage the LaLaurie estate locally. In June 1834, poet William Cullen Bryant was sailing to France on a ship called the Poland when he recognized the LaLauries. Seeking refuge with Dr. LaLaurie's family in France, unimpressed by the standard of living, Delphine, along with her youngest children, fled to Paris without Dr. LaLaurie. French records show that she died on December 7, 1849. Her body was disinterred from the grave in Paris in 1851 and sent back to be reinterred at a St. Louis cemetery in New Orleans. There is a grave marker in the St. Louis cemetery with her maiden name and the date of death. Strangely, court documents from 1850 suggest that she was alive and well as she sought to contest the executors of her brother's will in the Louisiana Supreme Court. Given the conflicting information available, we actually don't know when or where she died. So was this the end of the LaLaurie Mansion? Well, like many other stately mansions, it was repurposed over time. However, the evil seeded from the horrors of Madame Delphine LaLaurie's torturous reign may still reside within the walls. The building at 1140 Royal Street has served various purposes over the years, including apartments, a musical conservatory, a girls' school, a homeless shelter, and now a private residence. Tours inside are prohibited, so visitors must stay on the street or sidewalk. In 1894, a resident was found murdered in his apartment, suggesting a robbery, though he had mentioned a sinister presence before. Residents have heard strange sounds from the rooms once occupied by slaves, and footsteps are often heard. Interestingly, the building's owners have also experienced misfortune and tragedy. The LaLaurie Mansion is filled with mystery, leaving us to wonder what led a woman of high society to become a brutal serial killer. Was it the abuse she endured from Dr. LaLaurie, or perhaps her husband's unfaithfulness? While Dr. LaLaurie likely turned a blind eye to the abuse, some sources shockingly suggest that Delphine didn't see anything wrong with her actions, believing she was simply following societal norms. Regardless of the truth, the mansion's haunted reputation persists, with tales continuing to captivate curious minds. Thanks for watching. Now what do you think about the LaLaurie Mansion? And if you liked this video, make sure to subscribe and like this video for more stories. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our newest videos. Until next time, stay curious and we'll be back with another one.